Welcome to the future. This is Ina Braxton from the Digital Future Lab, and you're listening to our weekly DFL podcast, where we cover the state of the gaming industry, technology, and diversity. Here are your hosts, Samantha Riley and Jesus Govella.
Hey, welcome to the Digital Future Lab podcast. I'm Jesus. Joined with me is Samantha, and our guest today is Ethan.
Hello.
So today's topic is definitely something that comes up a lot in the video game world, which is violence in video games. What do we think about it? Do we support it? And just our thoughts on that.
I know that I had limited exposure to, I guess, other people since I didn't have a friend group when I was younger. So video games and TV in general was where I got a lot of my social mannerisms for quite a while, just because also reality was scary, so I didn't want to watch reality TV back when I was elementary school. So, but I know that that did kind of cause me to seem a bit odd at school, just because that wasn't what they usually did. You don't smack your lips around literally when you're hungry or something like that, for example. Yeah. That just goes along with the video games too. I don't think that affected me, but I think that does go to show I didn't have any violent video games, but I think that it does have an influence.
What, just curious, what games were there that you played when you were in middle school?
Sorry I talked so long for the other part, but a lot of Nintendo stuff, so the Mario games in particular. It wasn't conventional violence, so I knew enough that it wasn't going to happen. I couldn't jump 10 feet in the air.
It's more like cartoon violence.
It's cartoon violence, and quite frankly, violence that I couldn't, is not physically achievable.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think from what I've seen, I never really played a lot of violent video games, but I think in me, I don't have that violent outlet where I need to hurt somebody. I don't feel like I need that, but I think some people do, and I feel like they receive that from playing video games. So it's their outlet to be physically violent because morally they know they would never do that in real life. So I think in a way it stops them from being violent in real life because they're doing it in a video game.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that because I kind of grew up with a few violent ones. I think my first one off the top of my head would be Call of Duty. I played that when I was, I think, about 13. So, and it didn't really, it was just, wartime. The worst thing is you shoot someone, some blood comes out and they die. But it's not really anything too graphic. It's something you'd see in a movie. And that kind of, I didn't really feel anything when that happens. It's kind of just oh, it just happens. It's part of the game.
Yeah, and I also feel like it could depend on the person.
Yeah.
Because I think some people can watch something very violent and not have it have any effect on them, just think just like you did, oh, that's just the game. And then I think some people can watch it and it could really affect them. And they can, it could shock them, or maybe it has some sort of lasting effect.
I feel I have a younger cousin who has basically grown up on those violent video games, the Halo games, Call of Duty. Fortnite now is his most recent sort of stint, I guess. But I guess, at this point he's around 10. I'm wondering about how that sort of development will go. I'm just tempted to say that it just scares me, I guess. The most important thing that I notice is that there's this sort of desensitized manner about violence that it does concern me, but I mean, he's gotten into play fights for the most part, so I'm not really worried yet, but I'm just as time will go on and then they kind of go into the world with this sort of desensitized, or possibly desensitized mindset, then we'll see where things go, but I don't know. I'm a bit scared.
I also wonder, just because you bring up, your 10-year-old cousin,
Yeah.
is it? If age plays a factor, because if you're, if you're 15 and you kind of already have a lot of your like mannerisms developed, like right from wrong, and then you play a violent video game, maybe that doesn't have as much of effect on you as someone who is like kind of in the developing process. Maybe they're like, like 10 years old, so they don't know better, and then that might have a bigger effect. So maybe there is the age factor that goes into it.
Yeah. I think I better warn the audience that I'm biased because I started playing violent video games moderately around 13. So then I would say age matters just because that's how I felt for me. But I don't have any other proof, other evidence other than that. So.
Mm-hmm. And also there's definitely a scale to these to how graphic some games can get. Like, for example, Doom, the new Doom 2016, it can be very gory, and it kind of markets itself as being that, to be where you can just like, you're playing as the Doom guy, and then the executions are a big part of that game, where they get right in your face, it's very graphic, you do them multiple times. You're like ripping demons in half with your hands and stuff like that. So that also plays into just how it affects who plays them, I think.
True. I was never one to enjoy those violent video games in general, so then I just therefore stayed away from it. So then, there's that argument that like it doesn't really cause any of the things that like we're worried about, like I guess an enjoyment of violence. Even then, it's like, it's just for fun, right? So, but it's still hard to separate. If you do make the argument that it causes violent behaviors, perhaps it's just more that like, no, it just like it's a collection for people who have a tendency towards it, I guess. But again, we don't have any sort of evidence to like suggest that this is what actually happens. I don't know if there are violent tendencies. But.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of tests on if video games really do like translate to violence, and there's even been like studies where like these people who have been convicted of like horrible crimes also have like a history of playing these violent video games, and so people try to use that as, oh, because of this statistic, this means that video games translate to violence. But then at the same time, like, there's people who are just violent because they're violent, not because they played a video game.
Right, and then, like, maybe they'll enjoy that game more because of it, but that doesn't, right, it's not a causation thing. It's a complicated thing, huh?
Yeah, it also feels like video games are an easy target.
Yeah.
Because what the game developers don't really have much in terms of how do they want to defend themselves against that argument, because they wanted to make the game that way. That was their vision.
Yeah, they can't say, oh, it's not violent, because it clearly is.
Yeah, that, and I mean, like, movies, The Avengers, Endgame, I love that movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's like violent all over the place, but it's like, who doesn't love seeing your favorite superhero like punch the villain in the face?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right when you said like blaming video games is an easy target. Because with like movies and like, I mean, everything in media, you can find violence in anything.
Right.
Like even like, I mean, some like magazines even, but I think it's like they have no way to defend themselves because it is clearly violence. Whereas like a movie, you can say, well, there's more of a storyline. Like the violence is only like 2 minutes of the whole movie, and it becomes kind of this argumentative thing. Whereas games, it's not so much.
Yeah, there are games that could, like, it's easier for games to go the non-violent route, but I mean, like, I gotta admit, I do like a little bit of action in the games. So it's like, I hope they don't find a reason to ban violent games, because there's still a niche for them where, a little bit of action is driving the narrative purpose, right? Like movies.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it definitely adds to it. Where, I mean, just like Avengers Endgame, like without that. I mean, no spoilers, but without without the, the action scenes, like it's almost, it kind of kills the storyline.
Right.
There's no ending to it. There's no
game.
There's no climax. Yeah, it's boring almost.
I don't know. I hope that like we'll be able to find, or studies will find a way to like, I guess, compromise these so that we can be reasonable about video games, and like, oh, why can't I play this video game? Just cause, and then like maybe there are more video games that we can show to our children even earlier than that, that they will enjoy. So maybe it's more about understanding their taste at that age and trying to like encourage that kind of thing. So.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Digital Future Lab and on Twitter at DFL_studios. Tune in next time for more on games, technology, and diversity.